I'll look into it this year.
Today's episode is sponsored by Amid the Old Wounds, who in conjunction with Rufin Publishing's Slowdown Records and Time is a Color have released a collection of all their vinyl releases and more called Almost Lost. Spanning just under 30 minutes, this is basically a discography of everything the project released between 2020 and 2022, except for cover songs. Both CD and cassette come with a handmade zine with lyrics and recording credits in white cardboard housing, all handmade artwork including taped-on paper strips and hand-stamped. Cassettes are limited to 40 copies, CD limited to 300 copies. Pick one up at timeasacolor.com. Hello, and welcome to Everything Remade, a podcast that I hope is about growth as much as it is about music. I'm Edie Quinn, and we have a great show lined up for you today. Before we get started, though, I'd like to remind you about our Patreon page at patreon.com/humanmachine. You can go there to get music sneak peeks, read zines, and so much more. That's patreon.com/humanmachine. Your support there really means a lot. And now, I'd like to play something for you. You're hearing Firecracker by Frail, featuring my new pal, Mike Parsell, on guitar. The song originally was released on the New Harmony 7-inch back in 1995, but is being re-released on the No Industry compilation on Numero Group.
I had a mixtape that actually was given to me by the guitar player from Frail, Don DeVore, that had, I think it was the Heroin paper bag 7-inch. And I think it was Gorilla Biscuits Start Today. And a couple other things. Those are the only ones I can remember from that. It had the whole Start Today, and then it had the Heroin paper bag 7-inch. Because we had met skateboarding, and I'd heard a little bit of hardcore, but not a ton. And he was like, "Oh, you got to hear all these other bands."
Mm-hmm.
And he gave me that mixtape.
What kind of stuff were you listening to previous to that? Like,
There's a skate video called Streets of Fire, and the soundtrack to that video is incredible. It had Black Flag and The Descendants and Firehose.
Okay, yeah.
Amongst
SST
others.
Records, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much. And I loved all that stuff, and that set me into, I had been listening to like the Pixies and kind of like more alt rock stuff, and then when I got that skate video, I was like, I like this like harder stuff. So
yeah, those skate videos and Thrasher magazines were really the way in for me as well. And then I sort of had experiences with like mixtapes and random kids at the skate spot like turning me into different things. But yeah I was trying to put a timeline on Frail because, depending on what metric you use for what someone would define as like what we now call screamo. Of course, nobody called it screamo back then. A lot of people were like, Frail is the first screamo band, but you mentioned, before Frail even existed, hearing the Heroin 7-inch, and I certainly put them in that category as well. But yeah, it just, when I was sort of preparing for the interview, I was thinking to myself, like, what is influencing this? What is influencing what I'm listening to right now? Like, what would become the sound that we know, and what is probably just now at like the height of its popularity, but yeah, I guess you were just getting into that stuff, but you said Don had given you the tape. So was Don like already kind of immersed in a world that you weren't sort of aware of, or just were becoming aware of, and that was like, did that friendship really set you on this path? Or
Yeah, I think he had some friends, like some people that he was in his high school. We went to different high schools, and that were a little older and kind of knew about a little bit more stuff. This is like when we're 15 years old, I think, or 16. I think 15, and so it was also a lot of just the Discord Records stuff. That was kind of in the high school that Don went to. That DC Discord Records stuff was really kind of in the little punk community. There was the what everyone was kind of into, and then I feel like Don and like our little group of friends was a little bit more into the hardcore stuff, like the straight edge New York and New Jersey hardcore stuff. And so it was kind of like we kind of mixed those two things, Once I started listening to Fugazi, and then like wanted to know where that came from, and we heard Rites of Spring and Embrace and stuff, we loved that stuff too. So I think that was just like an influence as well.
Mm-hmm. I maybe should ask this first, but you mentioned skateboarding, and I was just thinking, because I did skateboard when I lived in Dayton, Ohio, but I had only just started, and then I moved down to like a small town in Southwest Florida. Where were you going to high school at the time? What city was that?
We were just in the suburbs of Philadelphia.
Okay, so it was a suburb, though. I was just curious, at that time, what was your experience like skating and stuff? Because we had to find stuff that was like abandoned and stuff, or we obviously would get chased off like right away, and there became sort of like the abandoned like former hills or whatever, in Kettering, Ohio, like became like the spot, and we would meet like pros and stuff there and stuff. But what was your experience like just being outside of like a really big city like Philly?
Well, we would come into to Philly sometimes to skate. We'd skate Love Park, and me and my friend actually skated all the way from the town we grew up, Willow Grove, into the city, which is about 10 miles, which was a little crazy. But we skated. We loved like ramps, and there was a lot of backyard ramps. I started skating in the 80s, so it was like half pipes were really the thing still. I'm really lucky that my dad saw that I had such an interest in it that he helped me build a little half pipe in our backyard. And I met so many people that way. Like we were pretty cool about just letting people come over whenever. And that may be how I think I actually met Don in a parking lot in near my parents' house, and skateboarding as well. So yeah, there were some great spots in our little town. Someone actually built a bowl, like a skateboarding specific bowl at this day camp that we would like kind of sneak into and skate until the owner would start driving his tractor towards us.
Oh no!
Kicking us out, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we were really lucky. There was a lot of fun spots and pretty good skateboard scene, because back then when you were a skateboarder, you were like an outcast. You were kind of like
Yeah.
not accepted by the norms.
Yeah. Yeah, we used to
So
skate like into another town from where we lived a lot as well. Like once I had moved to Florida, we but we didn't skate to this other town for we didn't skate there for a better place to skate necessarily. We skated into this other town because they had this awesome Italian restaurant.
nice.
And so we were like in Southwest Florida, and we were skating for like to go from the town I lived in, Port Charlotte, to go to this other town, Northport, where this restaurant was. I don't even know. It would be like a couple hours of us skating, and
Yeah.
because like you can't skate all the time. Like you skate through a parking lot, and then there's like a street, and you have to cross it, like but it means you have to stop to like wait, and then you skate across the street, and then there's a parking lot, and then for a while there's not a parking lot, so you just walk. And so it's like this whole thing. But there was this restaurant, and they had these broccoli calzones, and we went in. The first time I ever went there, we went in there, and I was with a friend who had driven us up there, and we met a bunch of people, and we were eating at this place, and I was like, yeah, I want a broccoli calzone, and the guy behind the counter was like, you want a small or a large? And I was like, I want the large one. And I'm like at the time I'm like 5'7", 120 pounds, or something.
Yeah.
And the guy in like this thick like Italian accent is like, hey ma, he said they want a whole calzone. They can't eat a whole calzone or whatever. And the mom is just yelling out the back like, just give him the calzone. And it's like this whole thing, like, and she's like, Tony, leave him alone. And like yell, and it was this whole thing. And like, not only was the calzone amazing, but like, I was like, that was this like atmosphere between this guy and his mom, and I was just like, I need this in my life. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, so if you like calzones, that's a good story. But if not, maybe let's just talk about Frail. But
I love the calzone.
yeah, I mean, why not? But so you and Don were friends, and were you both like sort of playing in bands when you met, or had you not started playing an instrument yet? Like, what would that part of your journey look like?
Yeah, I think like I'd started playing music around then. I mean, I've been playing drums since I was a little kid, and I think Don and I played actually in a band. I think he just like joined it towards the end of this. My very, very first band was called Omission, and I don't remember him playing with us, but I have pictures of him. So I'm like, oh, he must have been in it. I don't know. He's like at the show, he's like got the guitar, and I don't. So, but that was a very long time ago. And then, me and Eric, who was the singer of Frail, we were like best friends, and we got just after a while we just got so into hardcore in the scene and like going to shows and stuff like that. Then we definitely wanted a band, so we started one, and then Don saw us play, and then he joined. I'm sorry, we actually have a landline too. So yeah, he joined. After he saw us play one song, he was like, "Oh, I'll join that too."
Yeah. Yeah, you said you were going to shows at this time, and you were getting really immersed in that. What did the kinds of shows that you were going to look like? Like, where were they being held, and like, what kinds of people were coming out and stuff?
We went to like, at first it was like the New Jersey straight edge hardcore scene was like kind of a really specific scene. It was like Mouthpiece and Resurrection and Lifetime and Crud and that whole world. And they would have big shows at Middlesex College in New Jersey. Otherwise, there was a lot of small clubs. Like there was a place in Bethlehem called Scarlet's, I think. And we would travel all over to see these shows. And sometimes it would just be like I remember seeing one in just like somebody's garage, and or like, be sometimes basements, although that seemed to happen like a little bit later, maybe a couple years later. Basement shows got bigger, but yeah, they'd be in churches and they'd be in college halls and kind of wherever you could get someone to let you do it.
Yeah. And that was like, basements really didn't seem to take off until the late 90s. It was all like VFWs and stuff before that. It was like...
Yeah, VFWs, a lot of churches. Actually been working out in the suburbs and haven't been past my old church in a long time. And I went past there and I remembered that I set up a show there with like Earth Crisis and Snapcase and all these things. It's like this very quiet suburbs. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, but the church is still open, like it's still...
Yeah, looks exactly the same.
Yeah, that's wild. I mean, that's definitely something like there's so many like houses and random places where we would have had shows, like here or there, and like one of the really cool places to have shows when I first moved here to the town I live in Indiana, it was this big, like, where it was a warehouse facility, and these people rented out 2 facilities, and like it was a lot of people, but they rented out 2 facilities that were next door to each other, and they would do shows at either one of them, depending on what was going on or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's like I saw some really cool shows there and played there a couple times, and it's so sad to me because it's like it got bought by a company that like leases or rents or whatever the porta potties. So they were just like, everybody out, we're filling this building with porta potties. Yeah. And so it was that forever, and now it's just nothing. They just tore everything down, and it's like there are a couple cool places to do shows here again, but for just years, it was like there was like one struggling basement that, like my basement, or another another house that just did like parties, and I heard they had really cool shows there, but it was like, I don't know, that's never been my scene. Like even though I did drink, until like around 20 years ago, like that just was not my scene. Like I was just always like, I feel like when you go to a show, like it's just I was always there for, like, I didn't need that to enhance like a show, or I was there for the message and the music. Like the music like got me off. I didn't have to, do the other stuff then. I mean, I would afterwards, but but I don't know.
I went to see Modest Mouse play at this small bar like way back in the day, and like none of my friends liked them, so I went by myself. And then like I bought a beer just to like have something to do with my hands, because I'm like, they didn't know anyone there, and it was like I didn't even drink it, but I just like didn't want to just be standing there doing nothing. Yeah.
It's I mean, I did quit drinking and all that stuff a really long time ago, and it's funny. There's been tours that I've been on with folks that drink like vivaciously, let's just say, and so when we would go to those shows, and where it's like my road companions are those that have like a real passion for drinking, I'll just give my drink tickets to them. But it's otherwise it's funny when you get those drink tickets and you're like, can I have a Diet Coke, please? And then you get practically laughed out of the place. But yeah. So
No, I feel like I've always thought like we were very lucky to have survived all the touring and stuff we did, because I don't know, we put ourselves in some pretty like weird, dangerous situations, especially with like the vans and stuff that we drove. And I always think like, man, if we had been drinking too, like we probably would be dead.
Yeah.
Like it's like not. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. Are you talking about like, you know, when you rip out the back seats and make lofts and all of this kind of thing, or?
Yeah. I mean, we just had like a sofa that was just like in the back of the van, and like we, you know, and just the van was so like it was just dangerous. You know, it just like wasn't really. It should have been like in the junkyard. You know, it was like such a piece of crap, and like, you know, nothing worked, and it just. Yeah, we would do like the dumbest shit. Like we would change drivers without stopping. You know, like.
Oh my God, that's a first for me. I've not heard that.
Yeah, we were like kind of wild and dumb back then.
Just change drivers without stopping.
Yeah.
My first van, it only just had the front two captain seats. That's it, and and it had it was a work van, and I don't know what work they did with it, but it had shag carpet in the back, and the shag carpet was just coated in oil, like I'm assuming like auto oil, you know, but it was just like coated in oil. So I had to get basically just like huge pieces of cardboard. I don't remember where I got it from, and it's just like this huge pieces of cardboard laying over this like shag carpeting, and we would have just like all our amps in the back, and people would just be like laying on this cardboard. And it's just like, please, like, we try to pack the amps in there, like, as like structurally as possible. So like any sudden breaks or anything doesn't just mean like equipment just toppling over on people.
Totally.
But then I had this friend, and we were at her house, and we were all hanging out, and she starts going off about like her ex, and she's like, he bought this love seat and I fucking hate it. And she was like, if I woke up one day and it just wasn't fucking here, I'd be so happy. And she went to the bathroom, and we took it and we put it out in my van, and we came back in, and she comes out, and she like notices immediately that it's not there, and she started crying. And I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, it was kind of a joke, but also you said that you'd be happy if it was gone. Like, we'll go get it and we'll bring it back in. And she was like, no. Like, I am happy. And so we did end up with this like love seat in the back. But for one whole tour, we did like, I don't know, 5 states or something, you know, with just people laying on this cardboard. And then, you know, like the love seat is like not that much better, but it gives the amp something to like sort of lean against, I guess. And then like when you got like 3 people sitting in it or 2 people sitting in it, then at least that's a couple 100 pounds of, you know, also like fortification, human fortification. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I think we even did get pulled over like one time. Like there's like one bridge that's like when you're on your way into Louisiana, that's like really fucking long. I can't remember what it is, but we got pulled over like on that bridge, and I got a ticket, but I don't remember there being anything about anybody being like, yeah, that's really unsafe, you shouldn't do that or whatever. You know, it's just.
I still love getting pulled over when I was straight edge, because, you know, the cops, you know, we get pulled over all the time because of how crazy our van looked and everything. Mm-hmm. And then they like, you know, they'd always think that you had drugs or like on you, or that you were drunk. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and I remember this one time, just like this cop just totally convinced that we were, you know, high or drunk. And then, you know, they made me do the breathalyzer test, and I'm like, I guess I'll do it. You know, I'm just like 0, you know, just like not drunk, not high. Sorry. You know, they just can't. They just like we had the van searched several times, like crossing into Canada and stuff, and they were just expecting to find, you know, just assuming because of the way we looked that they're going to find all these drugs and stuff. There would never be anything.
I certainly have had stuff pulled out and everything like that, like back in the day, but I was never like seriously accosted about like drugs or alcohol until like my band, like that I'm still in now, like was on tour once, and we got pulled over, and like the other person in the band at that time, and there was just two of us because we were a two-piece at the time. The other person in that band literally has never in his entire life, you know, and he's like 30 something at that point, done drugs or drank alcohol or anything. And I hadn't in like 10 years or something. And they're like, they bring out a dog to sniff my car and they say that the dog smells something. And I'm like, you know, like neither one of us do drugs or drink or any of that stuff. I'm like, have you ever heard of straight edge, you know, to these cops? And they like don't believe us. And it's funny because we have like a t-shirt that says on the back of it, it says like, even our amps are straight edge. And I was like, we've got these t-shirts, and like, they're like, you can keep your t-shirts, you know? And I was like, but they pull all of our stuff out, and they have this dog over there. And they were just like, there must have just been somebody hitting a weed pen or something at your show. And like, so they have like all our stuff out on the side of this road. It's 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. And they're just like, all right, you can go. And I'm like, and they just get back in their car and leave. And I'm like, well, we can't go now. We got to fucking spend a half an hour packing this shit back in, but...
Yeah. Frail, we got kicked out of a town one time. We played a show in New Bedford, and then these people were like, oh yeah, you can stay at our house. And like we stayed at their house. We're just gonna like eat some spaghetti or whatever and go to bed and then drive back the next day. And then one of the people that was with us came up and they're like, oh, there's a cop outside and said we all have to come down. So like we all come down, and this cop's like basically like, you gotta leave. You can't be in this town. And the guy whose apartment was like, well, you're not my landlord. Like, this is not your building. And he's like, these are all my building. And he like escorted us out of town.
Oh my God.
Like,
that's not even that small of a town, is it?
Well, this was like this pretty small town in Rhode Island that we went to after the New Bedford Fest.
Oh,
like,
okay. Okay.
Yeah, it was like a 45 minutes away or something.
Okay.
And yeah, it was just like, it was pretty scary. It was just this like total abuse of power, like cop just kind of, yeah, bullied us out of there.
That's wild.
Like, we didn't even do anything, man. Like, you know.
Yeah, you're trying to go to sleep. Yeah. I know. Getting back to like how Frail started. Mm-hmm. So you knew Eric and you knew Don, and you were sort of crisscrossing in bands and stuff. How does Frail sort of come together as you would know it?
Well, me and Eric were like, yeah, we want to do this like really heavy, kind of like noisy, like I think we had heard like Downcast and Struggle at that point, like abolition bands, and we were all like, we want to do something like this, like angry, kind of political, noisy, hardcore, and so we were like making some songs like that, and then we needed a drummer, so we were at a show and we saw this kid playing drums, and he was like not in the band, but he was like friends with them, so we wrote in the mail, a letter to that band, and we're like, hey, who's that kid playing drums? And they wrote us a letter back with his phone number, and then we called him, and he was only 14 at the time, was Brian. And so he came down, and he was like from 2 towns away, and he jammed with us, and it was awesome. We wrote our first song, and then we got one of like a guy that was like in our school, was like in the younger grade, and he played bass, so we had him come over, and he was into it, so he played bass. And then we played one show like that as a 4-piece, and then Don was at that show, and he was like, oh, I should play guitar with you guys. And that's how it started, and he like took over like doing the songwriting and stuff.
Okay, you said that the drummer was 14. How old were you at that time?
I think I was like 15 or 16,
And
like in that area.
And so you're all like between 14 and 16?
Yeah.
That is wild.
Yeah.
I was also playing in bands at that time, but they were not good. Let's just say that. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's weird. I don't know. It's weird because like I don't look back at those bands like I'm like, yeah, we weren't good, but at the same time, like I did get a call from someone at Epitaph Records one time, like this is like way before Epitaph. They obviously were releasing great bands, but they weren't like a money thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
But and the call was basically like, if you all like started writing songs about important stuff and not just like high school kid stuff, like, and got better recordings, then like we could talk. It was the gist of it. And I was like, I'll write songs whatever the fuck I want about. Like, fuck you. Like I didn't say that on the phone, but that was my mentality because I was like 16. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
I was like, I'll write about whatever the fuck I want about. Don't tell me, you fucking nerd.
Yeah.
You called me, But
Totally.
like, I don't know. It is wild to think like you could at one point just like send a record to someone and have an actual correspondence, and now you can't get an actual correspondence like when you can send someone something to hear instantly,
Totally.
But yeah, I don't know. So you played like one show like that, and then Don got in the band, and then you said Don, started doing a lot of the songwriting and stuff. Is that when like the band really started taking shape as you would know it?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think that like we kind of like made the idea of the band first and like the aesthetic and stuff, and then he was like, oh, because he was playing like in another band that was more of a I don't know, a different style, and so like we kind of had the style, and then he kind of was like, check out what I can like write within this kind of style that you set up, and like feel like that's like what kind of made it special. He's like very, very talented and like way more talented on guitar than I could ever be, and so that's kind of what I think helped make it a little bit of a unique thing, was like the combining of our like kind of me and Eric's idea of what we want to do with the band, and then Don's like musical prowess.
Yeah.
So yeah, it worked out, and it was super fun. And I think so.
I feel like I feel like, and you're saying these things. I'm not saying these things. Like this is your the way you're expressing it is that Don is technically way more proficient than you, and I feel like there's a precedent for really interesting bands with sort of that dynamic. And The first one that comes to mind to me is Fugazi. I think
Hmm.
that Guy is a way better guitar player than Ian, at least at first, right? But like,
Hmm.
look how well they play off of each other based on their strengths, you know?
Yeah. No,
And
and we definitely like, very kind of, the songs are very structured, but there's a lot of like little improv parts in there that kind of like made us, I don't know, click in a way, like what you're saying.
yeah. Now, when you were learning guitar, like, was that just by yourself, or was like your buddies showing you stuff, or like how did you approach learning guitar? Because you said you had been playing drums for like a long time.
Yeah, I've been playing drums, and like my mom played guitar, and she had a guitar in the house, so I would just like not just play with it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And my uncle is like an amazing guitar player, like kind of classic rock style. But yeah, just just mess around, and just till I could like understand like what was going on, and try to like imitate what I was listening to.
Mm-hmm. So just like getting a couple chords and then like you just like, oh, I like that song. Like, let me see how that works, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, cause
yeah, exactly.
we couldn't go online yet and get tabs or whatever,
Yeah,
not
no, and
quite.
there's
Yeah.
yeah, and I would go to shows and I would just watch. I mean, I used to like as a little kid, like I would if I saw live music and I would just watch the drummers, I love it. Like I love the way it looked. I just love the instrument so much, just like kicking this thing and it, made this sound and,
Mm-hmm.
and then so when I started playing guitar, I would go to shows, I would just watch what they were doing, like where their hands were and like, how it all worked. And going to shows was like the biggest like teaching thing,
Yeah.
just like absorbing it and noticing the little differences and yeah, trying to go home and copy it.
Yeah. I feel like I was al- I never played drums until way later. So I was always the opposite. I would go to the shows and I would watch the drummer and I'd be like, that's so fucking cool. Like, I can't wrap my head around that, right? And
Hmm.
and then when it came time to like we were playing with a lot of like chaotic hardcore bands or screamo bands, as we would call them now. Like, you can't watch them play. It's just like, it's just people rolling around on the floor or not even facing you, and
Yeah,
just like thrashing around. And so it was just like, yeah, I don't know what they're doing. It's fine. It's cool. But
totally.
it was by that point, it was like, it was not even, to me, it was not even about like, I don't want to say it wasn't about the music, because it's obviously it's about the music first and foremost, but there was something about like those first like screamo shows or whatever that I went to that was just like, I don't even, like, I couldn't tell you like what songs anybody played. Like, it was just
Right.
like the air was just like electric and you're just like,
Yes.
what, I don't know what the fuck this is, but like, I need to be a part of this. Like,
Hmm.
whatever, in whatever capacity that means. Like, if it means like I'm trying to cut out of work at the pizza place early to get over here and catch this band, or if it means like I like call up like three of my friends that have never played an instrument before and just being like, look, I got a bass, like, come over, like, I'll show you how
Right.
to do it, just I got to
Hmm.
be part of this. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's how we felt. We're like, we have to do a band. Like we're doing a band. Like me and Eric, like when we first started, like I think we just knew that we had something to say, or we had like, something in us that we wanted to express, and we just had to. It's like
Mhm.
there was no question.
Yeah. So y'all are putting some songs together, and eventually it's like, we're gonna record these songs. Like, had any of you before Frail, had you done recordings in your other bands and stuff, or was this?
Um, I don't think, no, I hadn't. I think Don had. I think his band at the time was called Disregard. I think they had a demo.
Okay. So,
Like,
Don is sort of like the mentor in like, as far as like the first time when everybody goes to record, it's like sort of like, these are the kinds of things that are going to happen, and like sort of put everybody at ease. But like, what was that? What were those first like demos or whatever that y'all did? Like, what was the situation like when you recorded? Was it like just somebody that somebody knew, or?
yeah, like we were lucky that we had, like, and Don especially, like the school that he went to, I feel like there were some older kids like that were kind of like like you said, like mentors, and they kind of put us in the right direction. Don himself is also like a very outgoing person. Like I was so shy I could barely talk whenever we were around anybody, but he was like, he would network and meet people and was not like shy at all. So he would get us phone numbers and like, just connections for playing shows and things like that, because he just was always talking to people. And so like I think like the first recording studio was the same one that like a lot of like this band Fracture from Philly, like it was where they recorded. He just asked those guys at school like, where do we go, and they told him. So that's how we ended up there. But we didn't know we were doing it all. And in fact, I'm pretty sure, I'm not 100% sure, but I think like on the first couple recordings, like we didn't even use a tuner. We just like tuned to each other, because it's like I'm listening to them like, God, it sounds like a little off. Like,
Yeah.
Trying to relearn the songs now, and like, yeah, it's funny to listen back to it. Just like we just plugged and played. We didn't really like do too much preparation. Like we knew the songs really well because we practiced like all the time, but we didn't do too much like recording preparation.
I think I was fortunate enough in bands that I actually have recordings of that like I would still bother to listen to. I think I was always like fortunate to where we would record somewhere where they'd have a tuner, or someone else in the band would have a tuner, but like I did not have a tuner myself until like 2003, when people were like, hey, it's your birthday, the band bought you a tuner. And I'm like, I don't need this. And they're like, no, you do.
Yeah, I've been telling these guys that like one of my favorite aspects of like doing this reunion show is to be able to play the songs, and then like in between songs, no tuning. Like we're gonna have a stage tuner. You tune quietly, like. I mean, I like go back and watch all the old videos of us playing, and it's like you play a song, and then you just have full volume tuning in between songs, which is just no one wants to hear, and it's like so rude and everything. So I'm like excited to like not have that.
Yeah, that is a very 90s thing, just like in general, just like, especially like if you go on YouTube and you see like a show and it's just like the vocalist or one of the guitar players or whoever, like, and they're chatting up the crowd or whatever, but it's like and like, the tuning, and you're always like, how far do I have to fast forward to get through? I don't need to relive that part. Yeah.
Totally.
But for sure. So what was that experience like for you, as far as like when you were doing those first recordings? Like, can you remember, like, were you just like overwhelmed? Were you nervous, or were you just like so fucking stoked because like here we are and we're doing this shit?
Yeah, I think we're pretty stoked. Yeah, we're just like, yeah man, we're doing this shit. Like we're gonna, like, we couldn't believe that someone wanted to put this music out and make a record, like make a 7-inch. So we were just like so stoked. We're like, fuck yeah, man. We're like, we want to do it all. We want to like put out a record, get a van, go on tour, like play as many shows as we possibly can. We would play shows every weekend, like while we were in high school. We just were all about it.
Wow. And were you traveling for those shows, like traveling far, or like what?
Yeah,
were your parents like, look, only this far?
My parents were very like, let me kind of go do whatever I wanted. They like gave me a lot of freedom. Some of the other parents like definitely were concerned, and like the guys would have to like kind of run away from home in order to go play.
Oh my
And
goodness.
they would do that sometimes, and like, I can imagine, like, it's because I'm a parent now, what that would be like. But you couldn't stop us. We were just doing
Yeah.
this, like it was just so important to us that we weren't really letting anything get in the way.
Yeah. How far were you playing? Like during those times, like were you
We
driving 3-4 hours to
in
other
the
cities and stuff?
Yeah, usually like we'd go out to like Lancaster, or we'd go up to like New York or Connecticut, or down to DC and Baltimore, like kind of like on the weekends. And then in the summer of '94, we did a trip with Chokehold down to Florida.
Yeah. It's I'm just thinking about you saying that the drummer was 14, and I have a child who is 14, and I'm just like, I would not want my child alone with his friends in Baltimore right now. Like I just
Yeah,
that like you're saying, like, yeah, at this point you realize you're like, whoa, you know?
yeah,
And
yeah. No, it's crazy.
at that time, you're just like, my parents don't know shit. Like,
Yeah,
we got this. And now, like, I mean, the last time that I went to Baltimore, I mean, I saw some scary stuff, and I heard gunshots, and and I'm like,
yeah,
yeah, I would not want my 14-year-old just like, and his questionable friends just like driving around Baltimore.
yeah.
Uh,
I've been living in Philly now, and I always say like Baltimore's like Philly but worse.
yeah,
But I love both cities so much.
yeah.
I
Look, I've
um,
always had a great time in Baltimore, always, but like,
but I think parenting is just different now. Also, like I feel like we're, as parents in this day and age, just so much more engaged with what our kids are doing. Whereas, like, I don't know, for me anyway, my parents, like, they just let me do what I told them, I wanted to do.
yeah,
So like, I was like, this is what we're doing, and they were very supportive, but they also like maybe gave me a little too much freedom. And I feel so like like just lucky that nothing too horrible ever really happened to us while we were doing all those trips.
yeah. I think a big part for me was that we grew up, like, we lived in Dayton, Ohio, and it wasn't. I mean, Dayton is not like it's not the most dangerous city or whatever compared to a lot of cities, right? But like, we lived in Dayton, Ohio, and it was like, it was a city. Some bad stuff happened, and you certainly heard about bad stuff, and and then when we moved down south, like, and that's when I really started, like, getting into music and playing in bands and stuff. The town we lived in was like, it was like unheard of for anything dangerous to happen, And
Yeah,
I think it's like my parents were split up at that time, and so my mom just sort of had this, like, I mean, we were going to other cities, and she knew that. Like, we were going to Tampa and St. Petersburg, and we were in Orlando, and we were going to shows there. And even my band in high school was like playing shows in those cities. But I think she just had this idea that, like, we were just in this like much safer place now, and never really got worried until that one time we went to a show, and some people smashed out one of my windows and stuff like that. But
oh wow.
yeah, it still didn't necessarily, like, she didn't like end up putting restrictions on me or anything. She just, the only time she really got mad at me was when I went and saw, this wasn't a show we played, but I went and saw Good Riddance at this skate park, and we were skating beforehand, and I like fractured my ankle, and we still stayed and did the whole show. We still stayed and watched all the bands and stuff. And
That's so funny.
I didn't even really think that I hurt myself that bad. I got home, and I woke up the next day, and I was like, Mom, I don't know if I can go to school today. I think I hurt my ankle last night. And she was like, whatever, and I like pulled the cover off, and she like screamed because my ankle was like huge, you know, it was like purple and all this stuff, but you know,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, it was just you're right, it was different, and I don't, you know, I don't know if like we saw stuff that we're like, oh, I wouldn't want my kids to be in that situation, you know, and so we're more apprehensive. I don't know, you know, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So like, you know, you're in high school, you're having 7 inches come out, you're playing all the time, you're doing trips down to Florida. Like, is there a point in Frail where like y'all are like all out of high school and you're starting to do like US tours and that kind of stuff, or because like I'm not really sure what the whole timeline is like. It's like y'all were releasing records consistently for, you know, for 1993, 1994, 1995, you know, y'all were putting out stuff, and then Make Your Own Noise comes out in 2000. And that was my first exposure. My friend Bob like gives me the CD, and I was like, holy shit.
Awesome. Yeah, we were together from 93 to 95, so it was like, for me it was 10th grade, and then we toured after I graduated high school in 12th grade, and then at the last show of that tour was the last show that we played, and so everything on that CD was recorded in those years and was mostly released on 7 inches. I think that the CD actually came out in like 96, the first version of it, 95, 96. But then like the guy who put it out, I think he just kept pressing it if it sold out. Okay. But we didn't really know. We didn't have any control over it. Like he kind of like doing his own thing with that. So
see, cause I was like, that 2000 doesn't seem right to me. Because I feel like I had that CD before 2000. I feel like I had that CD at the latest in like late 1998 or something, and so that makes a lot more sense. But I couldn't actually find it today when I was looking for it, because I just like wanted to find it, because my friend who loaned it to me just like never took it back, you know. So I still have it, but it was like, I don't know how many versions of it are. Sometimes like even I will go on Discogs and I don't really know if I'm finding the thing that I have or not. But I have a version of it that is in just like it's just in a plastic baggie. It's a CD in a plastic baggie, and it's like a bluish color cover, like a light blue cover, and there's some stuff inside, and I can't find it because I lived in that house that I lived in for 20 years, and we did shows, and you know, we moved into this house like about 3 years ago now, but all the CDs that I had, like all the ones with like jewel cases, I I bought a thing to put them in because I was tired of just like having like a box,
Right.
of CDs. But the ones with like that didn't have jewel cases, I did something special with them so that I would never forget where I put them. And guess what? I don't know where they are. So all of the like more DIY packaging and like, the like I have a copy of you and I's The Curtain Falls that's in there with it. I have a copy of like, the Assistant CD that's in there with it. Those are just the ones I can remember off the top of my head. But all the ones that came in like plastic baggies with like sort of gatefold opening, like little things and this and that, like are somewhere that I cannot find. But yeah, so that was that. Y'all did the band until basically you got out of high school, did a tour, and that was that. Like, what was sort of the, like, was it, I mean, obviously it's everybody is cool now or whatever, so I'm not trying to like dig up like bad stuff, but was it personal stuff or was it like people just like, well, I'm moving to go to college, so I guess that's it on the band, or?
No, I mean, we were on that tour. It was like, it was hard. We had no money and we weren't making any money. And we were, it was just like kind of stressful, just like being just whatever. And we were just also getting to an age where we're like kind of discovering more of the world and kind of getting, and like I personally was getting into like different things. And, I just think that like people come together and move apart from each other throughout life. And I was just like, kind of getting into some different stuff and just we're not getting along. We were like arguing. I remember this drive in California, we were just fucking like arguing the whole time. It's just like, I feel like they just were like, this is not really working anymore. It's like too much arguing, too much, and I just like stopped being straight edge at that time and just kind of like didn't really want to, do that anymore. And it wasn't just that, there was like other things too, but just
sure,
kind of like growing pains. You just kind of like move in different directions, and that's all. It was, it wasn't nothing crazy, nothing out of the ordinary, just typical kind of adolescence stuff.
Yeah. So I know personally, because I do a label, that people have been trying to do a discography vinyl for Frail for a long time. Like I was a part of one of them until one of the other labels that was involved, like I sort of was like, I don't fuck with them anymore. And so I dipped out of that at the time, but that never happened. And I don't want to name names, but and then I heard about another one. So it, with the Numero group doing this new thing, the No Industry release that's coming up, it's almost like y'all dodged a bullet with some of the. I mean, it would have been cool to have them out earlier, right? And people can get into the band and people can revisit the songs. But like Numero's this is going to be a big like special package. And how did that come about? Like, did you know the folks from that label already, or did they just reach out? Or
it's interesting. I didn't realize I knew Ken, but I did from back in the day when he did Tree Records. I was a fan of that label back in the day in the 90s, and I had no idea it was him. And I've been collecting Numero Group records because I love like a lot of like the R&B and country stuff that they put out. Like I think it's like one of the best record labels out there. Like I really love this collection of R&B from Minneapolis called Purple Snow. It's like all this like really underground, like really interesting old stuff. So I was a huge fan of the label, and then a few people got in touch with me and said like, "Oh, have you seen that Numero is doing like punk stuff now? Like you should see if they want to do Frail. And I'm so grateful those people did that, because I reached out to Ken and was like, hey, what do you think? And he was like, oh, yeah, I know you guys. He's like, I actually collated like a bunch of those CDs when I was like working with Bloodlink Records back in the day. And he's like, I think I wrote your band name like 1,000 times or something, because they were like all handwritten covers. And so, yeah, we started talking, and we put it together, and it's awesome. I'm so I still can't believe it. I'm just like, wow, it feels just as exciting and cool as when we were 16 and we got a letter in the mail from Steve Yuletide asking if we wanted to do a 7-inch on Yuletide Records. It's just the same kind of excitement and just like gratitude that someone would be interested in us like that.
Yeah. And is that more or less like what stoked the fire for y'all to talk about like doing like a show again or shows? Like I actually don't know like what you all have planned, but it was that conversation with Numero just being like, hey, we should do this one more time, or we should do this some more since this record is happening.
Well, when the conversation, when we started talking again, because of the record, it was great. It was so nice to talk to everyone. We all like had we did like a Zoom call with all 5 of us, and it was just like a blast. We're just like having so much fun catching up, and we like kind of continued the conversation, and then we're kind of like all in a place in our lives where we could do this. We're like, we live in different cities, but a few of us are kind of going through career changes, and we're just, all available to do it and want to do it. So we're like, oh, that would be fun. Let's do it. And it's been so fun, just like relearning the songs and playing together again and talking all the time. It's been great.
And is it like, I'm just going to assume, and I could be wrong, and I don't mind that. I don't mind being wrong. But like, I'm just going to assume that everybody has like way nicer gear now. Yeah. So like, how weird is that when you're playing Frail songs, but you have like decent gear?
I still have my same guitar that I had back then, which I'll never have a nicer guitar, that I just got really lucky with.
Oh, okay.
Like, my dad, for graduation, we went to the guitar shop, and there was this 76 SG that was, I don't know, it was like $600. And he's like, he bought it for me for graduating high school, even though I barely graduated. But I still have that guitar, and it's a little fucked up. So I have a much nicer playing guitar now, but I had great gear back then too.
Oh,
like I don't know. We were really into like vintage equipment. I think it was because of like DC bands. Everyone had like these like tweed amps, and we just liked that aesthetic. So like I had like a vintage Marshall back then too, and
yeah,
I have some vintage equipment now that that is sounding great.
Yeah,
I'm loving it. But yeah, I wish I would have hung on to that. I had like a Marshall Mark II from the 70s. That was really fucking nice. And when I was like in some other band, like later in life, I traded it for like drum hardware, because like my drum hardware bag got stolen at a show.
Oh, fuck.
So that was a big regret.
Yeah, I guess I'm just like, I'm generalizing, but like most of the bands that we played with back in the day, in like the late 90s and stuff, it was just like, you're literally just getting by with whatever you had to like,
oh yeah, don't get me wrong,
scrape together,
The first couple records, it sounds like my amp sounded hard. I remember we were like, for some reason we were real into these that brand Crate. It was like fucking sounded terrible, So like we had like the first record, the guitars. I'm like, I think that whoever remastered, I can't remember who it was, who remastered the music for the Numero release, like, is a magician, because they made those records sound so much better than the like how they sound on the original recordings. Like especially the guitars. It's just like, yeah. Pretty bad.
It's funny that you were talking about Crate though, because like my primary amp now is a fucking Crate. It's a Crate.
Sorry.
No. The thing is, like, when I show up and I play this amp, like, people are like, what the fuck? Like, it's not. I'm not a tone punisher. Like, I don't. Every band that we play with, like, their guitar tone is like. I mean, not every band. Like but like. We just played with this band called Burial Dance, and Alex, the guitar player for Burial Dance, like, is just like a tone wizard. Like, the guitars in that band sound so fucking good, right? And we played with them, but like, we'll show up, and I've just got this crate, GHX 1200 or whatever. It's a solid state. It weighs like 6 pounds. It's like smaller than a regular amp, but it's not like a quilter or anything, you know? It's just smaller. And I call it the baby. And I'm like, here comes the baby. And I put the baby up on top of the amp and on top of the cabinet. And like, people have been like, how do you get that to sound like that? I paid $99 for this amp because like we were on tour and an amp broke and we needed an amp. And like, now it's like the amp that I use because I'm like, it weighs like 5 or 6 pounds. I don't, maybe 8 pounds. I don't know. You know, it weighs nothing. It's small. Yeah. I think it's funny to call it the baby. It's like, you know, here comes the baby. But yeah, I do like all the recordings with it, and people are like, no way, that's not, you know, and I'm like, no, but like, I was just thinking, you know, as far as like, okay, we would play with like Usurp Synapse back in the day. And like, they were always an incredible band to see live. And like, when I said electric in the air, like, that's the first band that comes to mind. Like, being in a room while that band played was fucking ridiculous. And we just played with them again when they just came back. And they've all got really nice gear now. And it was, like, they were great, don't get me wrong, but it was so weird. You know what I mean? Because, excuse me, like, you're hearing some songs that you remember from back then, and you're just like, and they're coming out of, like, and someone has, like, an acrylic guitar, you know, with a steel neck, and someone has, like, an orange head with an orange cab, and they were literally playing through like Gorilla combo amps, and you know what I mean? Like, you're just like, what is happening here? You know, like, it was so weird, but it was like, it was cool at the same time, you know? Nice. But yeah, like, so everyone is, as far as like getting ready to the show, and you all live in different cities, everyone is just more or less like learning the songs the way that y'all knew them, like, individually. And then when is it all coming to head, like, with the first official, like, okay, we're practicing for the show? Like, are y'all getting together like a week beforehand, like 3 days beforehand? Like, what's that gonna look like?
So Derek, who played bass, and Brian, who played drums, and myself all live in the Philadelphia area still. So the three of us, like, we're kind of like the rhythm section. Oh, okay. We're practicing like now, like we practiced a couple weeks ago, and we're going to be practicing like kind of regularly until we start, till February when we play. And then like, we're going to practice just like twice or 3 times just before we play the shows with everybody. Okay.
Yeah, because you said that Eric lives in Ireland?
Yeah, so he's got the farthest to come.
Yeah. But also like, no shade on vocalists, because like, you do have to train your throat to do this, and you do have to, you know, you have to be in the kind of shape that you need to be in to do this. Like, I am a vocalist, so I know. But as far as like just sheer showing up after not doing this for 25 years and doing it, the vocalist does have the easiest job, like 100%, you know, because like, especially, it's just like, as long as you kind of remember how everything went, then you're fine, you know?
Yeah, no, we were like, are you sure you're going to be able to do this? You're pretty intense, you know, like what you were doing. And he said that he went out to his shed and practiced, and we were like wondering like what the neighbors thought was happening.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he's been renting out a rehearsal space in Dublin and just doing kind of like karaoke style practicing that way.
Yeah, the place that I lived in before, like I said, we did shows in the basement there, and there wasn't a neighbor that was like directly next to us or whatever. And now I live like, my neighbors aren't that close. Like the houses aren't like right on top of each other. It's not a city or anything, but like at the same time, like this is a very rural area. Like I live more or less in the country now, and like it's wild because like I'll just be down here like doing vocals, and like I'll go upstairs and like, you know, my wife will have the windows open or whatever, and I'm like, oh my god, you know, like
Right.
this guy's out there next door like trimming, you know, his hedges or whatever, and I'm down here like screaming bloody murder. Like what does he think is happening? But I think, you know, I think at this point everybody knows, like, because they'll hear drums, they'll hear guitars, you know, and I think everybody
Right.
knows like, oh, okay. But yeah, it is funny to think that, just like, you know, like what do people think happens? Like, are the cops gonna, you know, show up because, you know, we heard people screaming, you know, or whatever. But yeah. So as far as like was it just one show that y'all booked, or was it more? I didn't remember the exact details. I like literally just saw this like a couple days ago.
Yeah, we've got one right now, and then we're working on some others.
Okay, so are they all going to be around the same time, or is it just like you're just? Oh, okay. And is the situation more or less like, we'll see how this goes and we'll take it from there, or is it already like we should do this some more like in the future?
Yeah, we're like we made a decision to just like take it one step at a time, but you know, we talked about doing other things.
Mm-hmm. And as far as this whole like, you know, thing goes, like is new music on the table, or is it just like, look, we gotta see how all this happens when we get into a room again?
Yeah, no, we were like, when we first talked, we were like, well, if we were to play a show, like, would we consider doing new music too? And like the consensus was like, yeah, that would be fun. Let's do the one show, see how that goes, and then if we want to, we'll make some new music too.
That's amazing. And that was my conversation with Mike Parsell. Thank you so much, Mike, for taking the time to chat with me. Follow the band on Instagram at Frail_Burns to make sure you know where they're playing and when that new music drops. Thanks to everyone else for listening as well. Until next time, take care and do good things.